Hi, Dan.
Hi, Chris.
Yeah, I have no idea. Dan, what are we talking about?
Today we are going to cover making animated gradients, how I would do it in Cinema 4D, and how we're going to do that in Unreal.
Love it. I'm peaked, full of interest. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit the subscribe, hit the like button, and we just learned a thing or two about the bell icon. So hit that thing if you want to get updated. Also, check out our Patreon, find out more behind the scenes stuff, project files, and yeah, helps us make content. And we'll keep doing what we're doing. All right, Dan, it's all you.
Sweet. All right, so we're going to start in Cinema 4D. I won't dig into too much about exporting these, but got all these little squiggly line doodad things. And I've used this a lot before. Kind of just a quick tutorial covering materials. So this is new for you, but basically just making animated gradients. So I've got this set up in Cinema 4D. I've got all these UV mapped the way that I want, but I really just kind of want to make this as an animatable property in Unreal so I can use this to control different material parameters. So before I dig in too much, just want to stress the importance that for this to work, for all of you people who don't like to UV unwrap things, it's got to be done. So let's pick an item. I'm using the spline wrap for all of these. So just to kind of show you how I made these, I've got this helix, which is the coil, some random splines and such, but I'm actually just wrapping these things using the spline wrap around them. By using these primitives, it keeps the UVs intact, because if you started with this squiggly thing and tried to UV unwrap it, it's a nightmare. So just showing you guys a little bit of how this is done. But when I make the UVs, we're going to show this, or I'm sorry, when I make the material, the UVs are going to be scrolling this from left to right, because that's how these UVs are stacked up on the surface. And all of these are the same. You don't notice much of a change, but that's because they're all square, and you'll see how that works. The dash line, which is another one that's in here, you can see I deleted kind of every 2 to 3 polygons in between to get this dash line effect. That's it. So let's dive into Unreal. So here we are. Here's the doodads in all of their glory. Just got a very simple scene set up, and this is kind of my control group just to show you what we're roughly going to make. So to start off, these all just have a standard material that I make. I'm going to start from scratch and show you how to make the material, and then we're going to make a material instance and just briefly explain why that's important and why we're doing that, and then show you how to bring this in and animate it in Sequencer for your motion graphic animations. So to start off, make a new material, right-click material, pretty simple. So M underscore, we'll call this reveal. So naming convention, M for material. Then I'm going to do MI for material instance, and it just helps keep these things sorted and clean because naming is important. So let's open this up. And if you're not familiar with Unreal materials, they're kind of in 2 steps. So the first, if you use Redshift or Octane and you're used to node-based materials, this one's kind of in that same ballpark. So to start off, I'm going to make my basic physically based material, because I'm going to have this be like metal object, and we're going to reveal light. So this gradient's going to help reveal light on this. So I'm going to start off by I'm going to hold down 3 and click, use the hotkeys. So this is a vector 3. This is my RGB data that I'm going to plug into base color. I'm going to click this, set it to white because I want this to be steel. And then I'm going to right click and convert this to parameter. And this is going to make this editable. So when we make our material instance, we can access this, and we'll explain why this is important later. So base color. And now this next one, I want to make a scalar parameter, which is just a single value, because for metallic, there's single channel textures. It's 0 to 1. Same with roughness, so we don't need the 3 values. So you could hold 1 and click and make this a value and then convert it to parameter. But I'm going to hold down S and save that step so I don't have to do it again. It's just going to load this up. So we're going to call this metal. I'm going to set my default value to 1. So I want this to be metal. We're going to do the same thing. Click S. Roughness. Going to make it nice and shiny. And then for this last one, emissive color, I want this to be several steps. We've got our base material. Let's throw these on a group. We're just going to call it VR, physically based. So now the next part that I want to do is my emissive, and I want it to be 2 colors. So I'll hold 3 and click again, and I'm going to convert this to a parameter, and we're going to call this emissive off. I'm going to leave this black because I don't want it to have any light shining out of it. And we're going to do emissive on. Nice and straightforward. And we'll just pick a nice warm cozy color to work with. Yippee. Okay, so what we're also going to want to do is we're going to right click and then linear gradient. That's what we're going to use to create this mask effect. And it's just like a gradient in Cinema 4D. So just to show this for effect, I have this gradient in here. I have this as a hard cutoff because it's set to, no, that one's step. So this one is a hard step. But if I set this to smooth, this is kind of the default gradient that you're going to get in Unreal. That's 0 on the left, 1 on the right. So that's what this is. And there's a few more steps because you can't quite see it right away. So the first thing I'm going to do to blend these things together is I'm going to make what's called a lerp. And this is basically a 0 to 1 range that's like a blending mask. It's a little hard to explain if you're not familiar with linear interpolation, but we're going to add our off to A, our on to B, and we're going to use, should be the V channel. We'll switch it later if it's not, but we're going to put this into alpha. So this gradient is serving into the alpha, which is our mask. So anything that's black on this gradient is going to be off, and anything that's white is going to be our on color. So right now, if I plug this into emissive, we're going to apply. This is fully emissive with our metal texture. And you don't see a gradient because we don't have any UV coordinates set. So that's the next fun part. So I'll set this up really quick. This is a standard UV setup that I make all the time. And once you get the handle of it, it goes pretty quick. So you start with your texture coordinates, which is your UV set. And now I'm going to make some controls so that when we get into our material instance, I have control over all these parameters that I want and I can art direct it. So start make another parameter with S. We're going to say scale U. I'm going to hold down Control and D. I'm just going to duplicate these. Scale V. So offset U. And offset V. So now I've got my controls, and now I just need to wire these up together. So for scale, actually for both of these, we're going to use what's called an append. And this is, we're going to do append vector, and this is just going to merge these two values together. Not 100% sure how all the math works on append, but I know that it will merge these two into controls, and then we'll add the math to these to make these work afterwards. So append these two, set our scale to 1, so we're not going to get these knocked down to 0. And we're going to duplicate this again. I've got another append. So the first thing I want to do is multiply. And when we use these values, it's going to be, either going over 1 or down to 0. But multiplying is going to allow us to stretch our UVs, which will get us the scale. And then after that, we're going to add them together. So now we're just going to get the offset. We're just going to add these on top of this number, and that gets us UV controls. So this is almost the entire step. So now when I hit apply, we're going to compile this material. And let's see, probably need to offset this. So I'm going to go into the material instance to show how this works a little easier. Because right now, if I try to scrub these values, I have to keep applying, which is compiling this whole material. And that's not how we want to work. So we're going to come back into this in a minute. So now I'm going to go back into my folder. I'm going to right click on this and make a material instance. And name this material instance. So it's the same as my reveal. Apparently I've got another one named this, so we're just going to throw a 2 on there because I think it's hidden in this folder. All right. So this is the fun part. So material instance compared to our material, this is a reference with all these controls that we exposed and made. So this is basically a hyper efficient version of this material that we made. So depending on what you're trying to do, a lot of times I'll make my own like master custom material, and you can make as many instances as you want. They're really efficient. You don't have to deal with compiling. But now that I'm in here, I can come and just start quickly like changing values on the fly, and you can start to see the changes. You don't have to deal with compiling and all that. So I'm going to turn on my controls and see where we're at. So offset V. There we go. So you can see it moving now as I go from 0 to 1, but it's a smooth fade, and I want this to be a hard fade. So the last step that I need to do, since this gradient is a smooth linear interpolation, I want this to cut like I had it in Cinema 4D. So when I come to this knot and I set this to step, now this is the fact that I have this second one gives me a hard cut, and that's basically what I want to get that hard line. So what I'm going to add to is I'm going to right click and search and floor. And if you deal with expressions at all in After Effects, it's the same thing. It's taking these numbers and it's basically rounding it down to the floor, which I believe is the nearest whole number. That could be slightly off, but so now I apply this, and this is the final material that we need to be made. And when I come back into here, you can start to see now I've got this hard edge. Exactly what I wanted, and now I have these working controls to make this do what I want, and I can crank up the values and do whatever I need to do. So that is the material. So I've got this built. I want to apply this to all these objects. I can either drag and drop this on the surface, or I can click here and then over under these. I can either search the material that it's got access to, or I can do use selected. And this is my favorite because now I can just grab these and just quickly apply it, and it just saves you some time. And now we've got these main materials. So if I open this back up, you can take a look at it. These are all running in the editor, and this is the nice thing is I can just preview exactly what these are doing to make sure that they're all working. So now, yeah, if I go backwards, it starts to blow out the math. So just try to keep it between 0 and 1. And if you crank it up, it goes further. Not sure why it does that. But yeah, now we've got these. The last step is bring this into sequencer, and now you can animate these completely. So let's see, I'm in here. We'll make a new one. So I'm going to go up to here, add level sequence, scenes. We're in the tutorials, and yeah, sequence. So now I actually have all of these, and I'll show you guys just how to access these really quickly. So I've got this object, and I want to animate this on the timeline and keyframe it. So how do you do that? So for this exact object, I'm going to take it, grab it, drag it, and drop it down in here. So what this does is this gives me access to this object, and I have to kind of manually expose these values, which can be tedious, but there's shortcuts and faster ways of doing it.
Show me the good old fashioned way to do things.
Good old fashioned way. So if you want to do this, we'd have to do this for each individual one, which isn't too bad unless there's a ton, but I'm going to go through and select the track that I want. And there's a bunch of options in here, but we're going to start with static mesh component. And to kind of show you how to kind of troubleshoot this if you don't know where to go, I'm selecting this object. And then under here is the static mesh component. So you can kind of see in your hierarchy where these things are located. And then when I click on this, it actually just gives you all of the options of everything that goes into the static mesh component that you can access. So the next one I want to go is element 0. So that's the material selection tag that I want to use. So when I go to element 0, now I've exposed this. And now these are all of the parameters that I had made in that master material. And since I exposed them for the material instance, we have access to animate these however we want. And really at this point, the only one I really need is offset V. So twirl this down again. This is basically where I left that material off, but I can set this to 1, scrub ahead, or 0, scrub ahead and go to 1. And now you can see that animates for all the lines. And quickly show you one more time, just as you can see the effect. Static mesh, element 0, offset V. Space it out. And just like that, now these two are animated. And that's it in a nutshell. Just shows you how to make a material, how to make your own parameters so you can control it however you want and animate that in Sequencer. Hope you got something out of that.
Yeah, I did. I am curious to see where we're going to go with it, and show me more powers with all the power you've already started.
I'm going to show you how to do a bunch of these all at once.
I can't wait. As always, check out or what is it? It's leave a comment. Yeah. As always, leave a comment below. Something you like, something you don't, something you had a question about. We love dialogue, interactivity, meeting people. Maybe there's a better way to do things. We have no idea. Whatever you want to say down there, unless it's really bad, and then we'll delete it. Until next time, thanks again, everybody. I don't know. We need like an exit. A little.
Bye, Chris.